To promote electric vehicle adoption and decrease carbon emissions, North Carolina's electric cooperatives are building a network of charging stations across North Carolina. In our next session, you'll learn how an increase in charging stations will lessen range anxiety for drivers, reduce emissions, and support innovation. You will also hear about other strategies to promote beneficial electrification and support North Carolina's electric cooperatives' goal of decreasing carbon emissions to net zero by 2050. For that conversation, you'll now hear from North Carolina's Electric Cooperatives Senior Vice President of Innovation and Business Development, Diane Huis. Diane, over to you, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Really honored to be here to talk about what the North Carolina Electric Cooperatives are doing about electric vehicle infrastructure and electrification in general. Next slide, please. To begin with, I just wanted to let you know that we have developed a brighter future, and we're working to get there. And by doing that, what we're trying to accomplish is our core mission, which is providing reliable electricity at the lowest possible cost. But we're also very focused on the communities that we serve. We serve 24% of the population in North Carolina and 45% of the land mass. And our commitment in this decade and beyond is to continue to provide electricity at the lowest possible cost. But we're also now pursuing responsible sustainability goals. And as was mentioned, one of those goals is that we're trying to get to a net zero carbon future by 2050. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're trying to get there. Next slide. One of the ways is through what we refer to as beneficial electrification. And we've adopted the Beneficial Electrification League's definition of what makes something beneficial electrification. It means doing one of these four things shown here while harming none of them. And by doing this, it benefits the cooperatives, the electric co-ops, through better utilization of our existing infrastructure, which can result in lower rates and better member engagement. It can benefit the member consumers that we serve through more options for convenience and control, lower their costs, and help us share and help them meet their focus on sustainability. And finally, it benefits our communities through improved quality of life, economic development, and improved environmental health. We're not advocating to electrify everything, but we do believe that in many cases, electrification can provide a myriad of benefits when done right. Next slide. And the reason for that is that electricity is continuing to get cleaner over time. Our region is already well on its way to a net zero carbon future by 2050, with reductions in carbon intensity in the North Carolina, South Carolina electric sector of over 30% from 2005 to now. You can see in the pie charts how the fuel mix in our region has changed since 2005 and how the share of renewables is projected to continue to increase. Pie charts also illustrate the important role that nuclear energy and natural gas play in our low carbon future. Since electrification eliminates the need to burn fossil fuels directly in business operations, in vehicles, or at home, it can play a key role in reducing greenhouse gas emissions economy-wide, even if the emissions in the electricity sector increase due to electricity replacing other sources of energy. Next slide. We look at applications of beneficial electrification in four broad categories shown here. I'm going to provide some details on each category, but before I do that, I want to provide a little bit more context on why we're so focused on beneficial electrification and helping us meet our brighter future goals. Next slide. For us, it started when EPRI released the National Electrification Assessment in April 2018. That study demonstrated how electricity could grow from 21% of the total energy mix in 2015 to 36% by 2050 through increased electrification. Yet even as the share of electricity grew, greenhouse gases would go down by 20%. That was an exciting message, and we wanted to know what it could mean for North Carolina. So we partnered with Duke Energy and engaged EPRI to do a state electrification assessment for North Carolina. This was a huge study that investigated the potential for adoption of electric technologies economy-wide and the corresponding impact on electricity generation and CO2 emissions. In this chart, you can see there are a number of different bars. The blue bars show the end uses of energy that are fueled by electricity. In North Carolina, electricity makes up 29% of the total energy sources in 2015, as compared to only 21% nationwide. And that's because we don't have as much natural gas being used in homes as you see in other parts of the country. Next slide. What you see here, and I know there's a lot of engineers in the crowd, so hopefully you're enjoying these bar charts here, but what you're seeing here is that the change in energy due to electrification. And so the yellow numbers are the percent reduction or increase in final energy from 2015 through 2050. Overall, the North Carolina study showed that electricity share of final energy would grow from 29% to 46%, even while total energy goes down by 21%. And in turn, CO2 emissions economy-wide would decrease by 35%. Some of this decrease is due to increased energy efficiency of electric appliances. You can see that by the reduction of 14% in energy used to heat, cool, and light buildings. Where you can really see the impact of increased efficiency due to electrification is by looking at the change in energy used for transportation. In this study, on a per mile basis, EVs use about 80% less final energy than internal combustion vehicles in 2015, and in about 65% less final energy in 2050. It's easy to see here why electric vehicles represent the single most significant beneficial electrification opportunity for co-ops and for the state as a whole. Next, please. Next slide. And one more time. So given that impact and the fact that electric vehicles are available now, we're focusing heavily on this technology. We're doing things like increasing awareness of electric vehicles and their benefits. Over half of our 26 electric co-ops in the state have added at least one electric vehicle to their fleet, and a few of our co-ops have added several. They make these cars available to their staff and directors, and sometimes even their member consumers to drive. Our co-ops are actively participating in regional drive electric events and hold their own events as well, including ones that focus on educating youth on electric transportation. Our credit union has implemented low interest rate loans for EVs to improve affordability. And we're also increasing awareness of EVs through our website, which is ncdriveelectric.com. Next slide. But a key piece, and a piece that's really missing and is going to have one of the largest impacts, is infrastructure. And I went ahead and put this slide in here just to level set everybody on what I'm talking about when I talk about chargers and EV charging equipment. Most people, and I think a lot of people don't understand this, most people will be charging their electric vehicles at home. About 80% of charging is done in the home. And that can be done just through a level 1 charger, which is just your typical 110 volt AC outlet. You can also charge at home using a level 2 charger. This accomplishes it much quicker. You can get 8 to 24 miles of charge per hour if you put in a 240 volt outlet. And that is also, level 2 charging is also the kind of chargers that you see at sometimes at hotels or restaurants or maybe at some parks. And then there are DC fast chargers. And these are the chargers that can quickly charge a vehicle up to an 80% charge in 20 to 30 minutes. These are the chargers that you need when you're taking a trip, when you're traveling across the state, or even across the country. And this is where we feel like there needs to really be a big push to get these out there in order to get people past range anxiety that was mentioned in my introduction. Many people that aren't familiar with EVs just cannot imagine driving one because they don't see a lot of chargers out there and they don't know how they would be able to get to where they're going, even though most of their charging would be done at home. So we have been focused on this infrastructure, and I'll show you in this next slide where we are. This shows the North Carolina Electric Cooperatives EV charging network. It includes chargers that we already have in service and ones that we have planned. The blue are the level 2 chargers. Those are the ones I mentioned that are typically at destinations where you might be staying for a number of hours. In some instances, this is hotels, or it could be parks. The DC fast chargers are the red markers, and those are the ones that are used to get across the state. We're very, very focused on these chargers as a way to increase economic development. We feel like we know that EVs are increasing not only in our state, but other states as well. We have a lot of beautiful places to visit, and people want to drive their electric vehicles. As an EV driver, I do make my decision on where to go based on the ability to charge on the way there and to be able to charge when I get there. Driving there is half fun in my mind. So we think that this is something that's very important, and our members, our co-ops have really adopted this. So they have recently invested over $1 million, the co-ops have, in increasing our DC fast charging network with those red markers. If we go to the next slide, you can see that we've also received some of the Volkswagen funds that were available to help fund additional chargers. I took the map that was out on the DEQ website, and it just marked in yellow the chargers that our co-ops will receive funding for. We received funding of about $700,000 to increase DC fast charging. And I think what's really important to notice on this chart is if you look at the red pins, those are the existing DC fast chargers. And if you look at the areas where many of us like to go to get away for a little bit now, a lot of those areas along the beaches and in the mountains, there are not chargers there. And so we have really been advocating for more chargers to be able to access these rural parts of the state. And we were very, very excited to receive some of this funding. The blue lines are the corridors that were high priority. And if you look west of Asheville, you can see that one of our chargers is going to help complete an alternative fuel corridor as designated by the Federal Highway Administration. So we're excited about that one. We're excited about the one up in Northeast North Carolina, pretty much across the state, more places where people can get to and drive their electric vehicles. We also just want to say a little bit about the governor's clean energy plan through Executive Order 80, that there's a goal to have 80,000 electric vehicles in the state by 2025. This reinforces why it's very important that we come up with another way to fund infrastructure. But in order to get there, studies show that we'll need 400 to 500 DC fast chargers and up to 10,000 level 2 chargers. And where we are right now, we're at about 279 fast chargers, and about 166 of those are Tesla chargers, which can't be used by other cars. And there's about close to 1,500 level 2 chargers. So you can see that we have a very long ways to go infrastructure-wise to get to where we can really meet those goals and help start reducing carbon emissions. Next slide. Another area that the North Carolina co-ops are focused on when it comes to electrification are school buses. So we were very pleased to be awarded Volkswagen funds for an electric school bus through a partnership with Randolph Electric Membership Corporation, one of our co-ops, the Department of Public Instruction in the county school district of Randolph County. This new electric bus will be a 2020, it will replace a 2005 model diesel bus that has close to 290,000 miles on it. So obviously this will greatly reduce emissions. And we expect that bus to operate around 6 hours a day during the school year. School buses are a great fit for electric transportation because of the number of hours that they're driving and the times when they're available to charge. So this is an area where we hope and expect to see tremendous growth in the future. Next slide. So I said I would talk a little bit about the other sectors as well. So I just talked about transportation, and just for a second, I'm going to talk about what we're doing for our industrial and agricultural members. We have developed solutions that we refer to as BEST solutions, and that includes beneficial electrification technologies and sustainable technology. And when we say sustainable technology, what we're talking about there is renewable energy. Depending on the needs of our C&I accounts, and that means commercial and industrial, we can provide solutions that range from renewable energy credits all the way to solar on site. If you pair that with electric technologies, then you can really provide a way for these accounts to be able to meet their sustainability goals. Many corporations are now putting those in place. I'm sure a lot of you watching this conference this morning have those goals in place for your company. We want to partner with our accounts and help them be able to meet those goals. Next slide. So what we've done is we have gone through the data and looked at all the accounts that are on our system, and we've looked for the best fit beneficial electrification technologies. And so there are a number of other kinds of transportation that we're focusing on. Forklifts, for example, are a great way to reduce emissions and improve productivity, reduce fumes, and improve working conditions for people that work in your businesses. Electric truck refrigeration units, being able to not have trucks idling, but instead to have those trucks plugged in while they're storing cold food or while they're being loaded or unloaded, greatly reduces emissions and again, reduces noise, reduces fumes, improves the environment, and terminal trucks as well. So those are some of the areas that we're looking at in non-road fleets. We're also planning to focus in the near future on on-road fleets and replacing light-duty vehicles with electric vehicles. So helping businesses understand what they need to do when it comes to charging. Our co-ops are prepared to help these companies understand charging needs and when it makes sense to electrify a fleet or not, and how to provide the correct infrastructure. We can also help companies understand the economics behind this. How much will you save in gasoline costs? How much will you save in maintenance costs? How much will you spend on charging? We're also very focused on what we can do in the agricultural area. Many of our member consumers are in this sector, and so we're looking at ways to help them be more productive and cost efficient. One of the ways is through electrifying irrigation pumps and coming up with different ways to do things like crop drying. We're also looking at new applications in industrial manufacturing, such as replacing boilers with electric boilers, for example. Many of these technologies, just like electric vehicles, they just utilize less energy to get the same job done and can often get things done a lot quicker, more efficiently. Next slide. I mentioned sustainable technology or renewables, and I just wanted to share an example of a case where we have done this. This is something that is not in service yet, but it is in the development stages. Roseacre Farms is a large agricultural account. They produce, I believe it's around 2 million eggs a day, and they're served by Tideland EMC, one of our co-ops. And they supply Walmart. They have very high sustainability goals, and they wanted renewable power on site. So Tideland EMC and the electric co-ops as a whole are partnering with Roseacre Farms to develop an on-site microgrid project that will not only result in solar energy on site, but will pair the solar energy with energy storage to allow them to avoid running their diesel generators, further help them meet their sustainability goals. It also provides greater resilience in the case of storms, power outages. And one more slide, please. And then I mentioned residential. What are we doing about beneficial electrification when it comes to homes? So, you know, we have a lot of infrastructure out there. The more that we can use it without having to add more, the lower our rates become. We're, like I said, we're not trying to increase the amount of electricity at peak times. We're really trying to manage that. So what we're doing is we're going all the way to devices in the homes to help manage peaks, and have several programs in place in order to do that. These help with grid flexibility, and they can actually serve as a virtual power plant for us. Electric vehicles are a big part of that in the future. They can grow energy. 3 electric vehicles charging at a house equals, I mean, 3 electric vehicles equals a house. And so, you know, that can help us grow load. And there are many different ways that you can incentivize charging when it makes sense for the grid, so that we can charge at the lower cost times without having to add additional infrastructure to accommodate that. So this is an area that we see great potential for as well. Next slide. And finally, I just wanted to share some resources with you. I have our co-ops website out there, so you can learn more about some of the innovative projects that we're doing as we look to 2050 and our brighter future goals. The ncdriveelectric.com is our website, and there you'll find a lot of information about electric vehicles, including, you know, myths and facts. You can get an idea of how much money you could save by driving an electric vehicle and what you could do for the environment as well. I'm also sharing here some studies by EPRI, the National Electrification Assessment, and the North Carolina State Electrification Assessment. And finally, the Beneficial Electrification League is a group that is there just to promote electrification because of these benefits. And if you want to learn more about what it can do for you as a business or you as a consumer, you can find some videos out there and a lot of different resources. And that is it for me. So I can take some questions now.
Okay, thank you, Diane. We have one question from Suzanne Young. As an EV owner, I am glad to see growth in the availability of DC fast chargers. However, in addition to range anxiety, battery management is also a concern. To extend battery life, I limit fast chargers to extended travel. I'd love to see more level 2 chargers at commercial locations for mid-range trips. Are you working on that as well?
Yeah, we definitely are. I think the level 2 chargers are a great way to go. I didn't get into the different kinds of electric vehicles, but there are hybrid electric vehicles as well that plug in, and they can get all the charge they need to be able to drive using electricity, you know, with an hour or less of charging on a level 2 charger. So for those cars in particular, the level 2 chargers are very helpful. So a lot of our co-ops are investing in level 2 chargers, and we are working with our National Organization of Electric Co-ops on trying to increase awareness of organizations like hotels and restaurants, shopping centers, all those places that we all look forward to going back to in the future, and getting them to understand how important it is to have chargers in place. Again, you know, I think that it can play into people's decisions as to where to go, and as we start to see more EVs on the road, it's going to start to make a difference. I didn't talk about this too much, but what we have found through adding this infrastructure, and is surprising, is that it can be very difficult to get these chargers sited. That is really the hardest part. And when I say that, I mean dealing with the site hosts and trying to find the entity that actually owns the property and can make the decisions can sometimes take a really long time. There's a lack of awareness around the benefits of having these chargers on site. I mean, I will admit 2 years ago, I really knew nothing about EVs. And I was kind of like, huh? But now that I get it, I get it. And a lot of people still don't have that knowledge. And so it's really important that we have a really concentrated education effort. Any other questions?
Thank you. Can you speak to the electrical infrastructure network upgrades needed to distribute power to rural and shoreline charging stations?
I'm sorry, was that the question?
Yes. Can you speak to the
repeat it?
electrical? Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I couldn't hear the whole thing. I'm sorry.
Okay. Can you speak to the electrical infrastructure network upgrades needed to distribute power to rural and shoreline charging stations?
Sure, yeah. So right now we are well equipped without needing to add a lot of extra infrastructure. And we think that we're going to be able to handle increases in charging for some time to come. I think where the infrastructure needs will really increase is when we start to see more heavy duty vehicles such as trucks, large trucks. Those are the kinds of vehicles that need very speed chargers that, you know, those are the types of vehicles that could have an impact on infrastructure. So by starting to build our infrastructure out now, you know, we've learned a lot about kind of what is needed, what does it do to the system. We know that it is really important to come up with ways to incentivize people to charge when it makes the most sense for the grid. We don't want people's electric costs to go up because they're charging at home. I mean, yeah, they're going to pay more because they're buying more electricity, but we don't want their rates to go up as a result of that. And so several of our co-ops are doing things like special time of use rates where they charge less overnight for electricity, encouraging people to charge their car, not right when they get home from work, but, you know, later at night, say 10 p.m. when electricity needs are down overall and there's plenty of resources available. Any other questions? Over my time.
Thank you. Yes, I do have 2 more questions that came in. Next one is from Ed Reams. What are the costs associated with charging my EV at one of the NC co-op charging stations? Is there a fee and how do I pay the fee?
That's a really good question. So it's interesting. You know, this is a growing industry and it's got the, I would say, the usual growing pains. It's not like a standardized cost right now. It really is up to the site hosts how much they charge. And I think what we're finding is that some of our co-ops added chargers early on. One of our co-ops has a DC fast charger, and at first they weren't charging anything for the energy, and we realized, you know, that wasn't a sustainable model long term. So many of the co-ops now are charging a fee, especially to use the DC fast chargers. The equivalent cost to charge using to charge your EV is around slightly over $1 a gallon. If you were paying for gasoline, that just gives you a general idea. That's based on 10 cents per kWh for electricity. So it kind of takes into account charging at home, charging at a workplace, and charging at a DC fast charger. Overall, it was mentioned in one of the questions earlier, you don't want to charge at a DC fast charger unless you have to. When I go on trips and I stop to charge in Charlotte, there are lots of cars charging there all the time. And I think it's because they live in apartment complexes that don't have level 2 chargers. So, you know, those are the types of places that we're really focused on educating, because that makes a lot more sense than needing to constantly add a high speed charge to your vehicle.
Thank you. We have one more question. It's from Marlene Sanford. Where is the industry with hardening the grid against natural or attack EMP and other attacks or failures?
I don't know that I'm the best person to speak to that. I do know that there are efforts going on statewide to help with overall resiliency of the grid. And I think that those efforts would hopefully address that issue as well. So, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much
Thanks
for your
for
time, Diane.